Goody. I'm your host, J-Smoove, and welcome to the Life Unexamined is Not Worth Living, and we are on episode 5, Compatibility. Yo, what are you laughing at? I could barely get through the title of my episode without you interrupting me. See, this may already be a sign of compatibility issues.
You think so? Okay, well, I think we'll determine that at the end of the episode, okay?
Sounds good. Now, before I get started, you all can find me on Spotify and Apple, and there you all can subscribe to my podcast. Follow me on IG at the_life_unexamined_podcast. And there I'll be sharing some video content of me discussing various topics that I talk about on my episodes during the week. And I'll also be sharing my words of the day to keep y'all actively thinking. And please visit my website, examineourlives.com, where you can find information about my podcast, information about myself. You can find information about guests that I have on my episodes. I have some blogs that I'm putting together as well. And if you want to reach out to me, you can hit me up on my website. Any suggestions, feedback, any questions that you may have, please don't hesitate to ask. And if it makes it easier for y'all, you can also leave me a voice message on my website. And who knows, I may end up playing a message on one of my episodes. With your consent, of course. All right, so let's get back to business. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Weleskie Dias-Bourke. I've known her for about a decade now. And based on her life experiences, I think that she would be the perfect person to talk about compatibility.
Thank you so much, J-Smoove. I appreciate you having me on this episode, and hopefully I am the perfect person to talk about compatibility.
All right, so you already know how I do. I'm also going to Merriam-Webster's and look up the definition of compatibility.
Here we go, looking up the definition. I love this part. I remember when I first met you and we were having a debate and you looked up a word that we were having a conflict on, and you're the first person that I know who's done that. You looked up the definition, told me what the word meant, and we still debated the meaning of the word.
Yeah, anybody that listens to my podcast knows that I'm very big on semantics and also expounding upon that and getting to the deeper meaning. But at the end of the day, I'm not here to play the mental gymnastics game. The meaning of a word is just that. The meaning is simple, and I don't deter from that.
And I don't believe that it means what it means. And therein lies the conflict. All right, let's get it. Let's get it, boy.
Indeed. And I will say that for as long as I've known you, you've always been a lover of words. And I actually put you on to the word logophile.
Yes, you did.
Which means a lover of words. And I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I did not know what that word meant until I became an adult. And I mean like years after I became an adult. You know what I'm saying? But that definitely describes her. She is certainly a lover of words. Now, how she uses reasoning with those words, well, that's a whole different story.
I do love words. And the difference between you and I is you are very strict with the definition. And sometimes I think that, yes, that's the definition. But what I think they're saying is, or the way we use it now is a little bit different from the original definition. So that's a debate that we get into often. But, you know, we like to debate each other. So it's fun for us.
So now that we got some of those formalities out of the way, let me do my job and keep us on track. So according to Merriam-Webster's, the definition of compatibility is capable of existing together in harmony. Sounds pretty straightforward. But that's not always how it works when it's applied in the real world. Well, at least that's been my experience. But tell the audience what your experience is.
So I think I agree with you. That is what compatibility is. But I also think that it depends on who you're trying to be compatible with. Because we can be compatible with anybody because we can find shared experiences. But if we're talking about something deeper, as in being in a relationship, then yeah, compatibility has to go to a whole different level.
Now, you just said being in a relationship, and I know that I can make an assumption and think that you're talking about a boyfriend, a girlfriend, or a husband and a wife, but I don't make assumptions. And from a technicality standpoint, relationships come in all forms. So what exactly are you talking about when you say being in a relationship?
I think what I mean is being with someone who you plan to spend maybe the rest of your life with. So that will be your spouse. And that's one of the deepest relationships that you're going to create in your life. I know one of the things that we can't do is we can't pick our family, our parents, our siblings, but we do have the opportunity to really try to pick the person that we want to be with for the rest of our life. And that is such an important decision. Why don't you try to find out, are we really compatible? Are the emotions that we're experiencing guiding us to thinking that we're compatible? Because I think that does happen quite often. I think a lot of times we do use our emotions as a means of gauging how much we like this person. We may connect with them because we're just having such a good time. This person is funny. This person does so much for me. All those things that make us feel the butterflies inside. But those aren't necessarily the things that are going to say if we're going to have a really fulfilling, long-lasting partnership and relationship.
100%. And that's where everything that I talked about in episodes 1 through 4, your foundation, figuring out who you are, figuring out if you're conditional, unconditional, what your core values are. This is where all of that can be used to your advantage. You got to examine yourself inwardly and look at your surroundings and your environment. And once you figure all of that out, then now you can start thinking about long-term, who are the important people that I want in my life?
And I agree with you on that. I think that knowing how you can be compatible with somebody means that you really have to know yourself. And that means you have to put in a lot of work to understand who you are and the things that are most important to you. I think that when we do things based off of our emotions, that could be self-sabotaging. So you shouldn't really do anything when you're emotional, right? They always tell us that. Take time, cool off, think about it. But I think that we don't do that when we, quote unquote, fall in love with somebody.
All right, hold on, pump your brakes. Now, the whole falling in love thing, I've never been a firm believer in that. Even saying that love is an emotion or it's a feeling, I've never been a firm believer in that neither. I think that love can produce feelings. I think that love can produce emotions 100%. But the whole falling in love, falling out of love stuff, it sounds good, but I ain't buying what they selling. It just never resonated with me. Love is a choice. You choose whether or not you want to love someone. Just like hate is a choice. You choose whether or not you want to hate somebody. It's the same thing. But for some odd reason, we have this like magical aura that we want to put around love, and I just can't explain it. I don't know why I love her. I don't know why I love him. Well, then y'all need to think about that. You know what I'm saying? If you don't understand why you love somebody, that's a problem. You really need to examine that. Maybe it isn't love. Maybe it's just infatuation. Maybe you just miss someone. Maybe you just long for someone. And I'm just using those as examples. But that's what we've been taught. And we've been programmed to believe that it's such a overwhelming and magical feeling. And it's pretty straightforward. You know that somebody loves you based on their actions. Somebody could tell you that they love you until they blue in the face. But if their actions don't show that, do they love you? I mean, that's up for us to determine that. But that's based on your actions. Faith without works is dead. That's a verse from the Bible. It's the same logic. If somebody tells you that they love you, how do you know that? Not just because they said it, because of their works, because of their actions, what they do. That's how you know that. This shouldn't be difficult. Feelings and emotions come and go, but love stands forever. And that right there, that's the power of love. But it's up to us if we want to exercise that. But I digress. This is just one man's opinion, and I get a little triggered whenever I hear people talk about falling in love. That's all. But carry on.
No, I know that you've always told me that, but I do think that that is what people base love on. The feelings of it, the emotions of it. Oh, it feels so good. Oh, I'm on a high and I can't stop thinking about this person. All day I want to contact this person. And that is wonderful. Again, self-sabotage. Because I think when you think about love in that way, you aren't thinking about the things that are the most valuable to you as a person. If this person understands me, if this person will do as much for me as I will do for them, how did this person handle conflict? If we have conflict in relationships, there's always conflict. What this person does in financial situations, how we're going to build together. All of those things are not based on emotions. It's not based on the fun that you have. It's not based on sex and how great the sex may be. Those are the emotions. But I think that if we think deeper about it, and if we think on compatibility, what we want for our lives and how we want that person to partner with that, all of those things are enhanced. So I think sometimes people move backwards, if you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean, and I agree. But it looked like you had a little bit more that you wanted to say. Continue.
I think in a friendship, compatibility means something else, right? So we can talk with that person. We have such a great time with that person, but we may not need to solve our conflicts together in a way that is going to mean that, emotionally we are in tune. But when you are in a relationship, why are you shaking your head at me?
I'm shaking my head because that's yes and no for me. It all depends on the person and their situation. But I do agree that when it comes to a partnership, there's a lot more that goes into that than a friendship.
Sure is.
That's a fact. But there's definitely people out there that have conflicts with their friends, and they definitely have to learn how to deal with those conflicts together. And those friends could be causing a ton of stress to these people's lives. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that's the equivalent of being in a partnership with somebody where you see them every day. I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying friendships could cause a lot of damage and strife as well.
This is true. But if you're my friend, I can go home. I can get away from you. If you are my partner, I'm going home to you. I'm staying in the conflict. So that's why it is really important to understand, who you're with. One of the things that I know for me is I am a very emotional person. And when I get emotional, watch out. Sometimes I can say certain things that I really don't mean because it's in the moment. So for me, one of the key things that I know about myself is that I need a partner who knows how to calm me down. Maybe let me rant, maybe stop me from ranting. But they always have to calm me down. I don't mind being with someone who is emotional also, but I'll tell you right now, if they amp up my emotions when I'm emotional because they are upset, then more than likely it's going to spill into something that we're just going to start yelling at each other. And I know for me, over time, that erodes something in me when I'm in a relationship with that person.
All right, now pause. I absolutely agree with you when you said that when it comes to a partnership, we always have to go home to that person and we're constantly in conflict. It's not the same thing as a friendship. I agree with that. And I think that I made myself clear when I spoke before. I was just making a point that friends do cause stress, that was all. But I did want to ask you a question. Where did you attain all of this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding? Where did it all start for you? What was your foundation? How did you get to this place?
Okay, how I got here. So I will say I have had to do a lot of reflecting on the relationships that I've had.
Reflecting?
Yes, reflecting. I know you're big on that. So yeah, I think that one of the things that people don't do enough is reflect. Again, when I talked about self-sabotage before, based on emotions, I think if you don't reflect, you're sabotaging yourself. We really need to know a lot about who we are. You have to have a developed emotional point of view, and that point of view has to target who you are as a person. If you don't know who you are and what makes you tick and what you want in somebody else, that's a major problem. And I think part of dating gives you an opportunity to do that. It's like you can test out the waters, right? It's a soft test. And when people do certain things that you don't like, a lot of times I think in relationships based on our emotions and how we feel about the person that we're with, we forget about that. We throw that out the window because we're so caught up in the good feelings that we're having. We ignore that this person just did some red flag things that we know that we don't like. And that's the things that we have to really think about and stop and evaluate. Critical thinking.
Indeed. Critical thinking is very important. And you just said a lot.
Don't I always say a lot?
You ain't never lie. But I agree with you. I think that many people compromise who they are just for the sake of a relationship. And those red flags that you were talking about, a lot of us disregard them. You know, when we have that gut feeling and we know something isn't right and we just suppress it and we just throw it by the wayside like it doesn't exist. Yeah, that's what many of us do. We don't trust our intuition because emotionally we're on a high. We feel good. That person tells us what we want to hear. They validate us. We enjoy their company. But none of that necessarily has to equate to a fulfilling and long-lasting relationship. And to take it a step further, there's a bunch of us out there that don't even know who we are to begin with, and we don't even have a foundation. So we're using a relationship as our foundation. And there's nothing wrong with getting happiness and fulfillment from a relationship. That's dope. But if we don't have a solid foundation and we don't know who we are, then now we're playing with fire. Because if something were to happen in that relationship and it doesn't work out, then our foundation crumbles. We put all of our eggs in one basket, and that's never a good idea. And now I want to shift gears and ask you, where did your foundation start?
That's a very good question. My foundation actually started in childhood when I was a child. I was very introspective. I thought a lot. I have 2 siblings, and one is 6 years older than I am, and the other one is 5 years younger. They're both boys. And so I think because of that, because of the year difference, I had a lot of time sort of to be to myself, because when you are 10 years old, does your 16, 17-year-old brother want to hang out with you? Probably not, right? When you're 10, do you want to hang out with your 4 or 5-year-old brother? Probably not. So that gave me a lot of time to think of what I wanted to have in my life, how I wanted my life to look. I thought a lot about my future, and I think a lot of young people don't do that. And honestly, I know we're talking about compatibility, but I do think that that's one of the things that you should teach your children to do, is really think about their lives when they're young. Have those conversations with them. So in doing that, I had an idea of what I wanted my future to be like. I knew that I wanted children. I knew that I wanted to travel. I knew that I wanted, to own my own home, be financially capable to do other things, fun things with each other. So those are the things that I thought about. But I also knew that I wanted a person that I could have a lot of fun with, hang out with, and I also am a homebody. So I wanted somebody who didn't always want to go out and have fun. So I wanted that balance.
So that's a dope background that you just gave us. And the point that you brought up pertaining to children when it comes to them learning about themselves, figuring out who they are, thinking about what they want out of life, that's very important. And I know that everything that you're talking about, you put that into action, because I know that you have those same types of conversations with your son. And I want to say that the fact that you're able to answer these questions so easily, that's a reflection of your reflection. I always got to throw the wordplay and the entendres into this. Nah, but seriously, that is a reflection of all the work that you have put in to reflect on your life and know who you are. But with all of that being said, I know that you were talking about your foundation and knowing what you wanted out of a relationship, but can you also talk about your foundation in reference to you being an individual that has nothing to do with a partnership at all?
Okay, so I will tell you, one of the things that I found out about myself is that I'm really loyal, and I knew that when I was young. I am an introvert and an extrovert at the same time. And so I think one of the things that I do is I can make friendships really fast. I can talk to people on the street. Hi, how you doing? I'm really a personable person, but I'm also an introvert. So that means that I like to have a close circle of friends, and all my friends who are in my close circle, they think that I have a whole circle of 100 other friends because they see how friendly I am, and people sort of tend to gravitate to me. But in reality, there are people that I'm really, really close to, and those are the people that I show my loyalty to. So I will do anything for friends. I will do anything for family. I will help acquaintances. I just have that kind of big heart.
No, it's a fact. You do. You definitely do.
So because of that, I have found that in any of my relationships, if people aren't as loyal to me, it does tend to hurt me somewhat.
That's interesting. That sounds very similar to what I spoke about on episode 3 of my podcast, conditional versus unconditional. You sound like an unconditional person that gives your all to someone, your love, your care, support, no matter the circumstances. But you may have conditional people in your life that may not give you the same type of treatment in return. It's not reciprocated. And over time, it wears on you. It hurts you. And you also don't feel appreciated. That's what it sounds like you're saying to me.
Absolutely. That is the case. And I have also found that I'm actually someone that people could take advantage of because I tend to be really nice. I don't know how to say no. And that's something that I think people need to learn how to do. It's important. And I'm just giving. And so people know that. And I think sometimes if you're dealing with the wrong people in your life, then they will take advantage of you.
No, it's a fact. I think it's very easy to take advantage of someone who has a good heart, someone who's very loving, caring, someone who will make sacrifices no matter the situation, no matter the conditions. And I also think that it's easy to take advantage of people like that intentionally or unintentionally. Because I think that when you know that someone is going to be there for you no matter what, someone is going to be helpful, and they'll do anything to make you happy, you can subconsciously take advantage of them. At times, it's possible. So that's why it's always good to have a balance, and it's always good to set boundaries and know the type of people that you're dealing with. But my personal opinion is if you are someone who's very giving and you will go to the ends of the earth to help others in your life that you love and care about, then you also need to put people in your life that are like-minded. And that could diminish or eliminate you having people in your life that'll take advantage of you. And now you'll be in a situation where you're not only a giver, but a receiver also. So keeping in mind everything that I just said, I do have a question for you. Do you believe that it's very important for people to have similar core values, the same core values, or can those core values differ? What's your take on that?
Oh, most definitely. I think that it's so important to find someone who has the same values as we do, because you have to be aligned. If you are misaligned, then I think that that causes so many problems within the relationship. But if your core values are similar, then I think that makes things easier for you, because there are always going to be conflicts in a relationship. Always something is going to happen. But if your values are the same, I think it's easier for people to work things out. If you have different values, then we're going to argue about it. It's going to cause conflict. And I think that one of the things is when we don't know people in that way, because the fantasy of all the emotions that I talked to before and not the things that are core, when that gets in the way, I think that then we have misunderstandings. So when we have conflicts, I'm thinking, why is this person doing that? I don't understand why this person continues to do that. The reason that you don't understand is because you don't understand their values. And that's why I think it's so important to understand who you're with, to understand your values, and to make sure that they're similar. Because I think in a relationship, you should sort of want the same things. I mean, we're different people, but you sort of need to be going in the same direction.
So I agree and disagree with what you're saying, but oh my gosh, you be saying...
I said too much?
Yeah, you said a lot.
Sorry.
Woman, please stop. You're good. And besides, I do these podcasts all the time, so clearly I enjoy talking as well. So I'm going to start with what I disagree with. When you just said that the conflicts arise from people not understanding each other's values, there is validity to that, but I don't necessarily agree with that. And it's funny how I just used the word agree, because many times it's not really about understanding, but agreement. I could understand what your core values are 100%, but they may not align with my core values. That's not a lack of understanding. That's a lack of compatibility and agreement. People use understanding and agreement synonymously, interchangeably so often that it's not even funny. I'm telling y'all, but it's not correct. So I just wanted to make that clear. The other stuff that you were saying, I agree with you. Now let's play a game of devil's advocate though. Two people can be in a successful relationship and have different core values. Your core values may not be the same, but those differences don't cause any type of friction. But then on the other hand, as you stated, if you do have core values that are aligned and y'all agree with each other, y'all have the same mindset, y'all have the same goals, then obviously that could play a huge part in determining whether or not you're going to have a successful and fulfilling relationship. There's no doubt about that at all.
Well, I mean, I agree with you and I also disagree with you. I think that if someone does something and it doesn't bother me, then we're compatible. I'm okay with that. I agree with the things that you do. Or even if I disagree, we're compatible because that doesn't bother me. But if it does bother me, then I think that is the...
Yo, I said that.
No, you said...
Yo, that's what I said. That's what I said, yo.
That's not what you said.
I said if y'all don't have the same core values, I said that that's okay. It doesn't necessarily have to be a problem. And to be exact, I said that two people could be in a successful relationship with different core values. I literally said that, yo. But when I played devil's advocate, I was just talking about when you made the statement that your core values have to be aligned and that if your values are different, that you're going to argue. I'm just saying that that's not necessarily true. That's all that I was saying. But I can be very big on semantics, which you already know, and I listen to every word that you say, and I just wanted to address it. That was all. We're on the same page. But as you and many others would tell me, I'm just being difficult.
And I understand that. I think that we do have to be careful because we want to make sure that we don't make a handful of good qualities and good values that we see in someone. We don't want to make that into great. If you have a handful of good qualities, that doesn't mean that everything else is great. So that's all I'm trying to say. Alignment, similar values, compatibility. I think that's the key.
Absolutely. So there's another thing that I wanted to talk about. which I tend to see so often.
Yes.
And it's really something that's very disheartening to me, to be honest with you.
Ooh, deep sigh. My goodness, what is that?
So when it comes to relationships, it seems like people are so dead set on changing who their partner is and molding and shaping them into what they want. So we hear that compromise is important, and it definitely is important. But at what point does compromise turn into sabotage?
Ooh, okay. You're talking about that beautiful fantasy that we have. You're talking about that lie that we tell ourselves. It's nothing but a killer of time. I think that we put ourselves in the position of when we first met this person. Everything was so great, and all these beautiful qualities that they had, and all the wonderful times that we shared with them. And over the years, we keep backtracking and expecting them to be the person that they were when we first met them. Well, that's a fantasy. And if we continue to be in that fantasy, and for years and years, we expect somebody to be who we think they are, who they showed themselves to be, and sometimes that's just not the reality. And the one thing that we always have to remember is we can't change anybody. And we shouldn't necessarily be looking to change anyone. We want them to be who they are and to bring their full selves into a relationship. If we don't do that and we start picking them apart, we start telling them the things that we don't like about them, we start saying to them, oh, can you change this? Oh, I don't like when you do that. Those negative things can affect the other person. And I think most of us know that people do run from negativity. If I am hitting you with the facts of how you treat me and the things that you do that I don't like, you're going to run from that. A lot of times, that's why they say positive reinforcement. When you're having an argument with somebody and you're having a conflict with somebody, you're kind of being negative most of the times because you're in the emotions of it. And that person is feeling beat up on, and they're going to run from those realities.
I don't know about people always running from negativity. There are a ton of negative people out here in these streets. And as they say, misery loves company. But I definitely understand what you were saying, and I agree with you for the most part. But it's funny because I agree with most of what you say, sprinkled with a little bit of disagreement. You know what I'm saying?
I will say then that negativity is not an instrument of change. That's what I mean.
I mean, yes and no again. Being negative can lead to change. Being positive can lead to change. Being around a positive environment, a negative environment, they all can lead to change. I don't necessarily agree that only positivity can produce change. There are things that can happen in someone's life from a negative perspective and it helps them to change positively. So I don't necessarily agree that that's true. And I want to make myself clear. I'm not saying that negative energy is good. I've said multiple times that we shouldn't want negative energy in our lives, 100%. I'm just speaking more from a technicality standpoint. Change can be brought upon by both positive and negative circumstances. That's all that I'm arguing.
I agree with you, but if you're being negative about my personality and the person that I am, then that is going to be something that's going to be harsh because it is hard to change your personality. It takes a lot of work to change your personality, and to have to change your personality for someone else, that shows that you're not compatible. People do try to change their personality to be with someone else, and I think that that can be the kiss of death.
Yes, the kiss of death. Your personality is your personality, B. Seriously. I don't think that people's personalities change. I think that people can try to put in work to suppress their personality and to suppress what comes natural to them. But I don't think that people really are going to change who they are. Who you are is who you are. From what you were when you were first born to what you are today, that's you. Yes, we grow older. Yes, we mature. Yes, we gain wisdom. But all of that doesn't mean that your personality changes. Now, as far as your character, now that can change. That's my personal opinion. You can change your character. But I also want to touch on something else that you just said. And this is one of those common misconceptions that people have when it comes to relationships. Like when you just said that, oh, you can expect them to be what they were in the beginning. And that's true, especially for people who poured on thick in the beginning. Yeah, I think that we all have a common understanding of that. But now let's take it a step further. And I'm talking about people showing you literally who they are in the beginning, but you don't believe them. And you're expecting them to be something that they're not. Fam, this is asinine behavior. That type of mentality is so counterproductive that it's Like what you said, it's a waste of time. Why be with somebody that's not fitting for you? And then you want to waste all this time working on them? Really? Nah, there's no reason for you to work on anyone. That person is who they are and let them be them. I believe that you should let somebody be 100% true to who they are. And if they don't work for you, then they don't work for you. It's not the end of the world. It really isn't that serious, yo. It really isn't. But we just put such an onus on finding that right person and, oh yeah, and I have to make it work with him or I got to make it work with her. Why? You don't have to do that at all. And like Cam said in Paid in Full, homies get shot every day in Harlem, B. You be all right. You tough, right? Now, that's an extreme example, but it still stands. You'll be all right. If somebody doesn't work for you in your life, it's all good. You'll be okay.
I agree with you. And I think that some of this goes back to when we make a decision to be with someone based on our emotions. I think that a lot of times when you're so excited about being with this person and you're having so much fun that some of the things that they do that bother you, you can ignore it. But over a lifetime and things change in the relationship, real life issues come into it, it's harder to ignore because the butterflies are not there 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Now you're into a real life situation. And when you're into a real life situation and this person is no longer prioritizing, maybe sweeping you off your feet, giving you gifts. I did that. 20 years ago. I'm not continuing to do that, right? No one pursues and chases someone for 20 years. I have you. So now real life comes into play. More of the person who you truly are comes into play. And that's when you have to know who you are and who they are and make sure that you are compatible.
Right. So I had one last topic that I wanted to bring up, and it's essentially pertaining to relationships that have more of a parent and child dynamic and less of a partnership dynamic. A relationship where you have one person that acts like a parent and they're dealing with the other person like they're a child. They're talking down to them, they're lecturing them, and they view them as being immature. And on the other hand, you have the other person who may be more immature and they have more of that childlike behavior or childlike mindset, but they don't want to hear what the other person is saying because now they think that they're not able to do anything right. And there are a lot of people who have relationships like this, and it's not truly a partnership where each person is carrying their own weight and they're building together. Could you briefly touch on that, though?
If you're trying to change your partner, if you are nagging your partner and lecturing them, then you may be parenting them. And I'm sure you don't want to parent an adult. And for your partner, I'm sure they aren't looking to have someone who is going to raise them all over again. They're an adult and they don't need to be parented.
Beautifully said. So I want to leave y'all all with these closing remarks. And this is just my own personal wisdom. You can agree with me, you could disagree with me. It really doesn't matter. It's just one man's thoughts. I think that we need to stop putting expectations on people who don't deserve them. And when I say don't deserve them, I'm not talking about us saying that this person is beneath us, we're too good for them, they're not in our class. None of that superiority complex garbage. None of that. I'm talking about the fact that they don't deserve it because it's not who they are. We tend to put unrealistic expectations on people, and then when they don't come through and do what we want them to do, we get upset, we resent them, we get sad, we get down, we get frustrated, and then we want to argue with them. We have to be able to identify and see this from the beginning. The foundation, right? But we honestly do have to be able to recognize these signs and red flags from the beginning. Know who you are, know who you're dealing with. Stop putting expectations on people who are not going to meet them. It's unfair to you and it's unfair to them because you're going to feel upset. You're going to feel like you don't matter. You're going to feel like, wow, they can't do that for me. Yo, that's messed up. It's such a small thing. Why can't you do that? It's a small thing to you, but it might not be small for the person that you're putting those expectations on. And for them, they start to feel bad about themselves. And then they feel horrible because they think that they're not good enough for you. And they're not able to meet your expectations and give you what you're asking for. We have to be able to see this from the beginning. But like Weleskie and I talked about earlier, a lot of us get caught up in the feel-good stuff, having fun, having a good time, and we don't really examine ourselves or other people. We don't examine who somebody is. We don't put the time in to understand somebody on a deeper level at all. Many of us don't even know how to scratch the surface, let alone getting past the surface. It's very superficial. That doesn't last. There's no longevity in that. So I ask y'all to put the work in to truly understand yourself and understand others and understand what they're about. What are their core values? What are their goals? What are your core values? What are your goals? And stop trying to force relationships just for the sake of a relationship, yo. It's disgusting. It's basura. I personally love the naturality of a relationship. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm always about. Anybody that knows me knows that. I'm about being who you are 100% and a relationship being natural. There's a natural understanding of each other. There's a natural understanding of what we both want out of life and what we deem to be fulfillment. There's a genuine desire to make each other happy, not doing things for people because, oh, well, they like it. And I mean, I don't care for it and I don't really want to do it for them, but they like it. All in the name of compromise, right? All in the name of compromise. I am so tired of hearing that, yo. Compromise is beautiful. It's a wonderful thing. But like I said before, when compromise turns into sabotage, then now we have a different type of problem on our hands. Stop compromising our core values. Stop compromising who we are just for the sake of a relationship. We need to create our boundaries. We need to set our boundaries and we need to commit to our boundaries. And remember, compatibility is about harmony. So if we're in a relationship and there's an unhealthy amount of compromise going on, and there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of unhappiness, there's a lot of arguing, there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of resentment and anger, then we really need to reflect and think about what we're doing. What's the point? We really need to take a step back and look at everybody in our lives, everybody, partners, families, friends, and think about if they're compatible. Think about if the people in our lives are harmonious for where we want to go and who we want to be. Because I know I'm personally not in the business to tell people to be someone that they are not. That's a fruitless task. And I'm also not in the business to tell people who they should and should not have in their lives. I'm not the love doctor. You know what I'm saying? I'm not. But if we want compatibility, if we want harmony, if we want peace, if we want fulfillment, then the only thing that I will say to everyone is examine, scrutinize, critically observe your lives. I've said this countless of times. There's no difference when it comes to compatibility in relationships. No difference at all. I just ask that each and every one of us utilize our brain in a meaningful way. Because regardless if you look at life as being too short, or if you think that you have a lot of time to live on this earth, any decision that you make in your life can have a long-term effect on you. So just make sure that you're putting the necessary work in to make critical decisions that align with who you are and what you stand for. It's your life. And I said this before, and I'm going to reiterate it. You make it what you want it to be. And when it comes to compatibility, you choose who you want in your life. No one should have the power to choose that for you. Woo! That's a lot that I had to get off my chest.
Yes, it was. I see you're trying to be long-winded like me. My goodness.
Yo, cool it. Now, before I get out of here, I want to give a special shout out and thanks to Weleskie for being on my podcast. I appreciate your participation, your wisdom, and your knowledge. And I'm definitely going to have you on my platform again. That's a fact.
What? Is that the end of the episode? That was so much fun. Thank you for inviting me, and I hope to come again.
Yeah, we're almost at like 39 minutes right now. Most of my episodes be around 25 to 30 minutes. So.
Ooh, so that means what? There's compatibility?
Nah, it just means that you talk a lot.
Oh.
But nah, I usually get straight to the point with my episodes, but it is what it is. And this episode was dope. Everything that we set out to do, we accomplished it. So, good job.
Thank you.
Nah, thank you. I hope you all found this information to be helpful. And remember, figure out what compatibility is to you. It's specific to every single one of y'all. There is no general compatibility rule. It's based on the individual. And once you figure that out,
uh-oh, I know what's coming next.
Yo, mind your business. Like I was saying before, and once you figure that out, you'll be moving along a path of a life that's worth living. I'm your host, J-Smoove, and thank you for listening to The Life Unexamined Is Not Worth Living. And we out of here. Peace.